Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Kabir Considers. In this video, I'm going to react to, is Texas becoming the new California? Now, this is going to be really interesting indeed. Like over the last sort of 4 years, I think there's been quite a large exodus of people leaving California, at least just from what I've read and what I've seen on YouTube. Like a lot of YouTubers in particular have left California for other states, with Texas being one of the largest sort of recipients of those people. I think the cost of living in California has become just unsustainable for a lot of people. Like I read somewhere that in some parts of California, $1 million won't even get you like a 3-bedroom house. It just wouldn't even buy you that. And apparently the taxes are quite really high there. I'm not really sure. So, you know, if it were me and there was nothing tying me down to that location, I would probably move as well, just because if I could have the same quality of life or even a better one somewhere, you know, and spend half on things like a mortgage, on things like food, taxes, you would have to consider it. But then you have to think about, you know, the people who, you know, like voted to put those policies in place. If large amounts of them move to another location, they may then bring that way of thinking to the new area in which they live, which could then potentially turn the new place into the old place. But then, and also if large amounts of people move to one area, property prices are going to go up inevitably because demand has gone up. So yeah, it's going to be quite interesting to see what this video has in store for us. I think it's going to be a really interesting one. Let's do it.
Texas, in many respects, stands alone. It's huge. It's iconic. Its people are proud. And lately, a growing number of businesses and billionaires have decided they'd rather be a part of the Lone Star State than, say, California.
This has turned into an absolute tidal wave. They are looking for a state that gives them the independence, the autonomy, and the freedom to chart their own course.
Yeah, a lot of large companies, I think, have moved their headquarters from California. I think Facebook did Facebook move? Oracle did.
Texas is big, wide open spaces. There's room to grow, and it's got a very business-friendly environment that makes businesses willing to move here too.
Austin is where Tesla is building its giant new gigafactory. Oracle moved its headquarters, and Apple's building its second largest campus. Governor Abbott talked to TikTok about a possible U.S. headquarters there too. CBRE and Charles Schwab both relocated their headquarters from California to the Dallas area in recent months. And Hewlett-Packard Enterprise is headed to Houston.
The pandemic in particular has had a really interesting effect, right? If you can work from anywhere, you can still be employed in, San Francisco, but living in North Texas, our real estate costs are a third of what you get in, the Bay Area. Of course, it all depends on having electricity to keep the web, going, especially if you're going to be telecommuting.
But long before its power grid was decimated by February's historic winter storm, Texas was experiencing a major boom. The state's Economic Development Agency says there's been a tremendous increase in corporate relocations since the pandemic hit, with nearly 200 projects in the works at the end of 2020.
I'm sure it's going to be touched on in this video, but how much have property prices gone up in Texas on average over the last 3 years? I would have to think, with the amount of people moving there, have things since 2019, have things almost doubled or maybe gone up by like 50%, which would be huge. That's like a massive price appreciation.
I think a lot of businesses see that and say, you know what? I can run my business without this massive government interference that I get from running my business in places like...
That's such a cool building. This is Apple's HQ, I think.
Like California or New York.
Texas and California are the two most populous states, with a fifth of the nation's people between them.
Wow.
As the largest Democratic state and largest Republican state, the rivalry between them is no surprise. While California's population and job growth both slowed to a trickle, Texas added more residents than any other state in 2020. With no income tax, Texas has attracted wealthy individuals like Joe Rogan.
No income tax? Hold on, so you pay no tax, or is there like a federal tax that you still pay? Like, what? No income tax?
Elon Musk, Drew Houston, and
work?
Joe Lonsdale to make the move.
One of the reasons I moved here is it feels like being extra American in a way. You know, it's like extra pull yourself up by your own bootstraps.
As the 9th largest economy in the world, Texas has always been a major business hub. In CNBC's rankings of top states for business, Texas came in second. Dallas has long been the financial capital of the giant state.
Incredible amounts of people are moving to Dallas right now. We picked up Toyota, State Farm. I can't even name all the companies.
Manufacturing is huge in Central Texas. Houston is home to big oil and energy, where major names like Exxon and Shell have been since the early 1900s. Largely thanks to oil and natural gas, Texas has been the country's top exporter for 18 consecutive years. The state's Economic Development Corporation says Texas is home to 50 Fortune 500 headquarters, more than 1,600 foreign-owned companies, and 2.7 million small businesses. Its civilian workforce of 14 million is second only to California's 18.7 million.
Texas has world-class educational institutions. The University of Texas system, UT Austin, the Texas A&M system, Houston, Dallas, and that's part of what makes it so attractive to so many of the companies coming here.
And as the
Texas gets really hot in the summer though, doesn't it? It gets like really hot. Like we're talking over sort of 100 degrees, over like 40 Celsius. Like that would probably, I don't cope well with heat at all. Like it's weird. I should, but I don't really. So having a really hot summer period. And how long do the summers last? Are we talking like a proper long summer? Like a 4-month, 3-month period? Yeah, that would really mess me up.
The pandemic created a work-from-anywhere mentality. Data from the U.S. Postal Service shows that Texas was the second most popular destination for people leaving the Bay Area.
Wow.
The cost of living here is normal. It's not artificially inflated. So you can actually come out here and make a decent living without having to spend $4,000 a month living in a studio apartment with rats.
But although California...
No way. There's no way it costs $4,000 to live in a studio apartment. I mean, maybe in like what, Beverly Hills, like, but even then, that's just insane. Like the most expensive areas in London, like let's say Belgravia, somewhere like that, you're probably paying for a studio in rent, maybe $2,000, $2,500, but it'll be tiny.
Yeah, is top of mind when it comes to big tech. Texas has a rich history of tech business too. Texas Instruments pioneered the development of silicon transistors out of Dallas in the 50s. In the 80s, 3 engineers from Texas Instruments broke off to form Compaq, developing the first portable laptop-sized computers out of Houston. Dell was founded by a freshman at University of Texas at Austin in 1984. IBM has had a major presence in Austin since the 60s, while Microsoft is a major employer in the Dallas area.
You think about California, it's the 49er, right? The 1849er. Who came to California to strike it rich and the gold rush and the birth of Levi jeans and everything like that. So in the northern part of California, you've got tech companies, and so it's moved from gold to silicon. Whereas Texas is a different story. Texas is Tejas, right? It's the Caddo word, and it means traveler or friend. And in Texas, we celebrate the 6 flags of Texas. And so the idea of Texas, I think, is very different. It's about coming together. It's about bringing different things to the conversation, throwing your stuff into the mix and seeing what emerges from that.
With a big new presence from Apple, Tesla, and Oracle, some are asking if Austin will be the next Silicon Valley.
We want to learn from Silicon Valley. We want to take, copy some of the great things from Silicon Valley. We love great people moving here from Silicon Valley, but we don't want to be Silicon Valley.
People really love being in Austin. That has forced...
But I mean, if you copy so much of it, inevitably it's going to become like a 2.0.
And propel tech companies, large ones, to establish offices here.
Austin is also home to South by Southwest, which Goswami has been involved with since its early days as a tech festival. He graduated from Stanford and moved to Austin in 1995 to work for tech company Trilogy, which also relocated from Silicon Valley.
We want people to become part of Austin. We want them to come and leave some of the California baggage in California.
Some say a major difference for companies starting in Texas instead of California is in funding models.
What happens in Austin is a lot of bootstrapping, and then, oh, you've got something, let's go add some funding to it. But you've got something that's proving itself out, right? Whereas in California, they'll go fund something with just an idea. We have some VCs here, we have some funds here. Is it competing with Silicon Valley? No, not even close.
While California had $65.6 billion in VC investment in 2019, by far the highest of any state,
Texas was quite far behind, way behind.
Came in fifth at $3.7 billion.
But I'm sure that number will grow considerably. I'm sure this year it's a lot closer. Maybe not a lot closer, but it'll be better.
While there's some investors that would only invest in Silicon Valley, there are only more and more investors who are willing to go do it other places.
Investors like Josh Baer say funding a startup in Austin has gotten much easier.
I've been here more than 20 years. It's the best it's ever been. This huge influx of all these people, capital, ideas, and that's just making it all happen faster and easier. And so I think that's COVID-19 really pushed everyone over the edge.
I put together a deck on Friday, and by Tuesday, we had the round done, $5 million. And that was all in Texas. That would not have been possible 7 years ago.
Last year, Lloyd Armbrust launched a PPE manufacturing company in an Austin suburb called Pflugerville. It produced...
I'm sure like a lot of people are just sick of the sight of these masks now. You know, they kind of bring back memories of, what we dealt with.
Is up to 1.2 million masks per day.
I wouldn't have done it in California. There's just no way. The regulations border on the ridiculous.
The Pflugerville Economic Development Group offered him more than $1,000 for each job he brought to the area. Austin offers similar incentives, like big property tax rebates at Samsung's proposed new chip factory. Armbrust first moved to Austin in 2011, relocating an earlier company he started from the Bay Area.
Hiring was the number one reason that we came here in 2011. There was just access to really smart people.
But because the cost of living in California is a lot higher than it is in Texas, our salaries higher too in California on average? You'd have to think so. Because, I mean, how else can you get away with charging so much more in rent and stuff like that if they're not being paid more?
And there wasn't that competition. You get into Facebook, but then Uber's coming at you and saying like, oh, I'm going to give you $100,000 more and stock. And it's very, very hard to compete with that.
More than 200 companies have relocated to Austin since 2017, and more than 70 of them came from California. SpaceX is expanding in South Texas, where it already has a launch site, but Elon Musk is growing his presence in Austin, too. He moved his personal home from LA to Austin, Tesla's Cybertruck will be built at the new Gigafactory in Austin, and the Boring Company is opening a big space next door to Armbrust.
Probably the funniest reason that I don't think a lot of people are realizing is because across the street is the private airport. When someone's looking at Texas, they're saying, how can I get around? And I think having access to that private airport is actually a really big deal.
Getting around the huge sprawl of Texas, especially as more people move in, means traffic is a problem.
So you know how horrible I-35 is. Like it's a dumpster fire.
A toll road with the country's highest speed limit, 85 miles per hour, offers one alternative to the infamous traffic on Austin's I-35. And there's a $20 billion high-speed rail project in the final planning stages.
I was going to ask, having a high-speed rail or just good public transport would alleviate a lot of the traffic problems. Because inevitably, if you've got a massive state with a lot of people, traffic is going to be a real issue. And nobody really wants to be stuck in their car for an hour to do like a 10-minute drive if there was no traffic.
It would go the 200-plus miles from Dallas to Houston in 90 minutes.
You can drive for 12 hours and you're still in Texas. Like, it's a big state.
At 1.6 times the size of California, Texas is the second largest state after Alaska. And all that land is a big draw for manufacturing sites.
There's plenty of room. Like, there are just farmers' fields waiting to be developed everywhere around me. Of course, that translates into cheaper rents and cheaper rates. We wouldn't be able to be successful in California with this business. The unit economics wouldn't make sense.
And all this space leaves room for a lot of cultural variety beyond the Texas cowboy stereotype.
It's not like, hey, come to Texas and you have to wear cowboy boots and you have to have a cowboy hat and engage in everything super Texan. That's not the case. My neighbor was white. My other neighbor was Vietnamese. Neighbor after that was Indian. Another neighbor after that was Black and Spanish and so forth and so on. So there's a diversity here that I think is hard to top in a way that a lot of people don't really think Texas is.
That's cool.
Coleon Noir grew up in Houston and now lives in Dallas. He worked for the NRA from 2013 to 2019, but he didn't touch a gun until he was in his mid-20s.
In Texas, I'm left to enjoy my ability to exercise my right without any unnecessary restrictions in a way that you can't say in a lot of other states. A good 75 to 80% of the guns that I own now in Texas, I wouldn't be able to in California.
Whether it's individual rights or business-friendly regulations, Texas government has a reputation for being hands-off.
That, to me, is one of the biggest differences between Texas and California. It's the fact that we understand, like, we place a high premium on freedom and independence.
California handled the pandemic far more strictly than Texas. Just one example of the state's differences in approaching regulation.
The government there is so oppressive.
I would love to know, like, because of the different attitude that California and Texas had towards the pandemic, which state dealt with it better? Like, which state had fewer deaths and things like that? If anybody has those numbers, please put them in the comment section.
That they shut down a mask manufacturing facility during COVID.
Elon Musk cited freedom from regulations as a reason for his move to Texas. Last May, Musk openly defied state shutdown orders by reopening his plant in Fremont, California. When the county pushed him to shut down again, he threatened to leave California altogether.
California's been winning for a long time. And I think they're taking it for granted a little bit.
Fewer COVID-related regulations in Texas allowed businesses to stay open, but Texas has a higher death rate than California. Despite warnings from Biden officials, Governor Abbott lifted statewide mask requirements and business capacity limits on March 10th. Austin didn't immediately follow suit.
Starting today, it's masks off in Texas.
The city says it is keeping masks in place for now, but then last night the state's AG threatened to sue the city if the city and county didn't comply with the state's mandate lifts.
Texas's political climate also comes with fewer taxes.
This is a personal income tax form in California. I never want to see one of these in the great state of Texas.
At 13.3%, California has the nation's top marginal income tax rate.
Okay, so this must be on top of the federal tax then, because I'm sure people are paying more than that in total tax. Like, so Texas, there's zero. So what is the federal tax rate then?
Texas is one of a handful of states with no income tax.
No matter which way you measure it, it is way cheaper to live your life and to run your business in Texas than California. It's taxes, it's cost of doing business, it's overhead, it's labor.
The Tax Foundation ranked Texas as the 11th best state for business in its 2021 State Business Tax Climate Index. California came in 49th. The Texas cost of living is also far lower.
I'm priced out of California, and people would consider me pretty wealthy, I'm sure. Like, I can't go to California and move my family there. I couldn't afford it.
After living in San Diego for about 7 years, we were hoping to have kind of a larger family and move into a bigger house, which in California is very difficult, right? If you want a place with good schools.
Brett Alder moved to Austin from San Diego in 2015. While Texas property taxes are some of the highest in the nation, Alder still preferred the tax system in Texas.
We went from about 1.25% property tax to 1.7%, and then got rid of the income tax. So for us on the tax side, it was definitely a net gain moving to Texas. If you move,
how much would let's say a 4-bedroom, 2 or 3 bathroom house in a good area with good schools nearby cost in a good neighborhood in Texas versus a good neighborhood in California? Like, you know, with good amenities nearby, like cafes, restaurants, bars, stuff like that. How much are we talking here? How big is the price difference?
Move to Texas, they charge the same property tax to everyone. But in California, there can be this huge disparity, which I think is kind of an undue and, in my opinion, unconscionable burden placed on younger people and newcomers.
But Alder was surprised at the high cost of utilities in Texas. Take his water bill, for example.
So it was like $12,000 just a connection fee, and then...
What? Connection fee? 12 grand?
Bill, for example.
So it was like $12,000 just a connection fee, and then on top of that, you know, I think our overall bill was like $200, $250, and that was just for inside our house.
Alder moved his family back to California in 2016.
You guys ready to say
they moved back to California?
Goodbye to Texas?
Bye, Texas.
Why?
But now they're getting ready to move to Nevada.
My dream is to be able to see California from my front porch, but not necessarily
bounces around quite a bit.
Taxes or the high housing costs.
While housing is still far cheaper in Texas than California,
median home price is huge difference. enormous difference.
The population boom is taking the Texas housing market with it.
Inevitable.
Austin home sales in January, for instance, were up nearly 24%, and inventory was at a record low. Frisco,
24.
Texas, topped the Census Bureau's list as the fastest-growing large city in the country. Texas cities took 6 of the top 15 spots, while Irvine was the only California city that made the list. More than 43% of Frisco homeowners have lived in the same home for less than 10 years.
The market right now is just insane. I mean, I'm looking at places and they're being snapped up in 2 weeks.
They're coming in and they're pushing up people who have lived there for generations.
Of course.
In fact, it could happen at a greater rate because the way that the property tax system works, it kind of it has like almost gentrification built into it.
Property taxes in Texas rise with the value of the home,
It's
so housing
inevitable.
demand raises taxes for current homeowners.
Is that sort of like auto gentrification that's built into the Texas real estate model? Is that a good thing? I think ultimately yes. And the reason why is because it generates wealth for everyone. The businesses that are coming in here are paying a lot more than the minimum wage, and I think that's just going to lift everybody up.
I know everyone keeps talking, Austin is like the California of the South. No, it's not. It's still Texas. It's nasty, it gets hot, it gets slimy, it's muggy.
We can't talk about Texas without mentioning heat and humidity.
This is a big one for me. Everything sounds amazing so far, apart from the high utility costs. But yeah, if the weather is really, really, really hot, that might be like a deal breaker. But then again, everything else, like the low cost of living, all of that stuff, it's very compelling. It really is.
It's hot for 3 months straight, and there's no expected reprieve.
Texas heat has led to terrible droughts and wildfires in the state, just like in California. And while California has earthquakes, Texas has hurricanes. The deadliest natural disaster in U.S. history was a sudden hurricane in 1900 that hit Galveston, killing more than 8,000 people.
Oh my
in
God.
2017, Hurricane Harvey took at least 68 lives and flooded more than 300,000 structures, causing $125 billion in damage. And in February, an unprecedented winter storm killed at least 80 people and left 4.4 million residents without power and more than 7 million without clean water for days.
Oh my God.
The Republicans have been in charge for a very long time here. They believe in small government. They believe in less regulation. And it's all good until the entire state goes in the dark. And, you get $50 billion in lost property and insurance losses for businesses.
While the rest of the country draws power from 2 national grids, Texas is the one state that's disconnected, largely to avoid federal regulation. Some blame this independence for the failure.
We're stranded in terms of the operation of our grid by and large. The reason that the grid failed is because we have huge and peaking demand, thanks in part not only to the storm, but also because our population has swelled so much. And really our infrastructure has not kept up with it.
Can't cope with it.
By early March, huge power companies started filing for bankruptcy after Texas's free market power grid system led to bills in the billions.
Oh, man.
When a company is looking...
I think it would be a good idea for Texas to go nuclear, no? This is the time to start developing some nuclear plants to cope with the growing demand, because more and more people are going to move.
At its critical infrastructure checklist for considering a move, Texas is definitely going to fall down on that metric, and I think it's going to impact a lot of decisions here in the going forward future.
As fallout continues from February's storm, some Democrats say it could be the catalyst that turns Texas blue.
I think it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. In Texas, all of our big cities are liberal. They vote Democrat.
A catchphrase has even emerged from those who prefer not to see political and cultural shifts in Texas.
So, don't California my Texas is essentially saying, if you're going to come to Texas, we welcome. Come one, come all, we welcome everyone. However, you're leaving California.
Wow, that's gorgeous. This is in California, right? Look at all the palm trees, the mountain view. That is stunning. Or is this in Texas? It's got to be California, I think.
California for a reason. Yeah, sure, you can come over here because you like the lower income tax or the lack thereof. But at the same time, if you continue to vote for the people who were like the people in California who were instituting these high income taxes, it's going to follow suit.
This next year, I think it's going to feel like the past 10 years compressed into one. from the announcements of new people moving here and companies coming here and new things launching.
While the trend is indisputable, debate remains about whether it will in fact change Texas long term.
Everything that Elon Musk is today is because of California. Like his first and second, third startups, PayPal, all of that was in California. Yet instead of saying, hey, let's improve California and make California really a great place, he's like, hey, I'm leaving. So he brings a transactional mindset. He doesn't bring a long-term mindset to Texas, right? It's just the place for him for now.
There's an entrenched culture that needs to be respected in Texas, because that's why Texas is the way that it is and why it is such a sought after place to live now. And so don't try to uproot it, just add a little spice. Bring a little bit of what culture you brought from California, just kind of sprinkle it a little bit there, and then leave Texas as it is and enjoy it. Try to appreciate what Texas is and just embrace the freedom.
Very, very, very interesting. Very interesting indeed. Great video. I think there's a lot of takeaways there. I think ultimately, you know, it's inevitable. There's going to be a quite considerable cultural shift in Texas. It's probably happening or happened already. Those of you from Texas, I'm sure, leave comments about how, your observations about how things have changed. I'm sure a lot of you have very interesting things to say. I think, yeah, it's like a cyclical thing. I think a lot of people may leave California to other places, you know, and then what could happen is the people in charge in California will notice this, and then they may change some of their policies to try and entice people back. Look at the family, the tech worker with his, you know, he moved from California to Texas. Now he's moving back to California. We don't know why, but partially it could be because of maybe how things have changed in Texas perhaps, or maybe it was just the high utility bills. And now he's moving from California to Nevada. So I think it's just a cyclical thing. Nowhere ever stays the same forever. It's just, you know, people are always going to seek greener pastures. I just think that's just part of the human condition, really. But yeah, very, very interesting video. Let me know your thoughts on it. I'm definitely looking to read, especially if you lived in California, moved to Texas, or vice versa. You know, just let me know what you guys think. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.